I'm Iris, 28 today, and finally hosting my first birthday in my very own house. After years of saving every penny, I thought this celebration would be perfect. Mom and Dad arrived early, but something felt off. When Mom whispered in Dad's ear, his face changed completely. I never expected what happened next when he suddenly pushed me aside. Before you join me on this emotional roller coaster, let me know where you're watching from. In the comments, hit that like button and subscribe to hear more stories that might remind you of your own family secrets. Growing up as an only child in a middle-class suburb of Chicago, I always felt the weight of being my parents' sole focus. Every achievement, every mistake magnified under their watchful eyes. My father, James, was particularly intense. A successful corporate attorney, he approached parenting with the same precision and high standards he applied to his legal cases. Nothing less than excellence was acceptable. Mediocrity is a choice, Iris, he would say whenever I brought home anything less than an A, and it's not a choice we make in this family. My mother, Laura, was the peacekeeper. Warm, where my father was cold, flexible, where he was rigid. She worked as a high school counselor, and I often wondered if she used the same techniques on Dad and me that she used with troubled teenagers at school. Whenever tensions rose between Dad and me, Mom would step in with a gentle touch on his arm, or a knowing look my way. "Your father just wants what's best for you," she'd explain later when we were alone. "His methods might be harsh sometimes, but his heart is in the right place." I wanted to believe her, but as I grew older, I noticed strange silences between them. Conversations that stopped when I entered a room, hushed arguments late at night that they thought I couldn't hear. There was something beneath the surface of our seemingly perfect family that I couldn't quite grasp. After college, I took a job at a marketing firm in downtown Chicago. My father had pushed for law school, of course, but this was my small rebellion. I excelled, despite his doubts, working my way up to senior marketing strategist in just 5 years. Each promotion felt like a victory, proving I could succeed on my own terms. Last year, I achieved what felt impossible, purchasing my own small house in Lincoln Park. It wasn't grand by any means, a modest two-bedroom with a tiny backyard, but it was mine. Every mortgage payment felt like a declaration of independence. "It's charming," Mom had said during her first visit, genuinely impressed. "It's small," Dad had countered, examining the kitchen cabinets with a critical eye. "But I suppose it's a start." That was high praise coming from James Peterson. Then there was Noah, my boyfriend of 2 years. We'd met at an industry conference where he was presenting on digital design trends. Tall with kind eyes and an easy laugh, Noah was everything my father wasn't. Patient, supportive, quick to praise and slow to judge. Dad hated him immediately. "He lacks ambition," he told me after their first meeting. "Men like that will hold you back." But Noah had his own successful web design business, and more importantly, he made me happy. He understood the complexities of my relationship with my parents in a way no one else had, except perhaps my best friend Ashley. Ashley had been my confidant since college. She'd witnessed countless tearful phone calls after difficult visits home and had developed a particular distaste for my father. "Your dad has some serious control issues," she once said. "And I think he's hiding something. People who demand perfection are usually covering up their own flaws." I dismissed her theory at the time, but her words would come back to me on my 28th birthday with startling clarity. For weeks, I'd planned every detail of my birthday party. The perfect opportunity to showcase my home, my relationship, my successful life to my parents and friends. I'd hired a caterer, selected a signature cocktail, created a playlist of ambient music that wouldn't overpower conversation. Noah had offered to handle everything, but this was important to me. I needed to prove something, though I wasn't entirely sure what or to whom. Perhaps to my father that I could create something beautiful and successful without following his precise instructions. Perhaps to myself that I was truly an adult, capable and independent. What I didn't realize was that my carefully planned party would become the stage for a family drama decades in the making. That by the end of the night, everything I thought I knew about my family would be turned upside down. The morning of my birthday dawned bright and clear, one of those perfect spring days that feel like a gift. I woke to the smell of coffee and the sight of Noah standing by the bed with a small tray. "Happy birthday, beautiful," he said, setting down a breakfast of avocado toast and fresh fruit. Next to the plate was a small velvet box. "You didn't have to get me anything," I protested weakly, already reaching for it. Inside was a delicate gold bracelet with a tiny house charm dangling from it. "To commemorate your first year as a homeowner," Noah explained as he fastened it around my wrist. "I'm so proud of you, Iris." Such simple words, yet they meant everything coming from him. When was the last time my father had said he was proud of me? I couldn't remember. My phone buzzed with birthday messages from friends and coworkers. Ashley sent a selfie wearing a party hat with the message, "Ready to celebrate the hell out of you tonight." I smiled, feeling genuinely excited about the evening ahead. Everything was prepared. The caterer would arrive at 5, guests at 7. I'd even arranged for a local bakery to deliver my favorite lavender honey cake. For once, everything felt perfectly in control. Then at precisely 11:27 a.m., the doorbell rang. "Are we expecting someone?" Noah asked, glancing up from his laptop where he'd been working. We weren't. I opened the front door to find my parents standing there 3 hours earlier than they'd said they would arrive. "Surprise," Mom said weakly, holding out a gift bag. "We thought we'd come early and help you set up." Dad stood slightly behind her, checking his watch as if he was already thinking about leaving. "Happy birthday, Iris," he said, giving me a stiff hug. Something was off. Mom's smile seemed forced, her eyes darting nervously to Dad every few seconds. And Dad, usually so composed, kept checking his phone, his jaw tense. "Is everything okay?" I asked as I led them into the living room. "Of course, sweetheart," Mom replied too quickly. "We're just excited for your party." Noah emerged from the home office, extending his hand to my father. "Good to see you again, Mr. Peterson." Dad shook his hand briefly, not quite meeting Noah's eyes. "Likewise." Mom filled the awkward silence with questions about the party preparations, following me into the kitchen, where I began arranging cheese and crackers to offer them. "The house looks lovely, Iris," she said, running her hand along the new countertop I'd installed. "You've really made it your own." "Thanks, Mom. I'm happy with how it's coming together." Dad remained in the living room with Noah, the silence between them occasionally broken by Noah's valiant attempts at conversation. I could hear my boyfriend asking about Dad's recent cases, offering thoughtful follow-up questions that were met with minimal responses. As I arranged snacks on a tray, I noticed Mom checking her watch for the third time in 10 minutes. "Mom, seriously, what's going on? You seem anxious." "Nothing, honey. I just want everything to be perfect for your birthday." Her eyes flicked toward the living room where Dad was now standing by the window, phone in hand. "You know how your father gets when he's tired. Long week at work." But this wasn't Dad's usual work stress. This was something else. Throughout the afternoon, as we went through the motions of birthday preparations, the strange tension persisted. Mom insisted on rearranging the serving dishes I'd already set out. Dad disappeared to take a phone call, returning with an even deeper furrow in his brow. At one point, I overheard a snippet of whispered conversation between them in the hallway. "We should tell her before," Mom was saying. "Not today," Dad replied firmly. "It would ruin everything." "But what if he actually comes, James? We can't just pretend." "Laura, enough. I've made my decision." They fell silent as I approached with a stack of napkins. Mom quickly busied herself with the flower arrangement while Dad checked his phone yet again. By 6 o'clock, with the caterer setting up and the first guests due in an hour, my nerves were frayed. Even Noah had noticed something was amiss. "Your parents seem tense," he whispered, as we stole a moment alone in the bedroom while I changed into my party dress. "Is this normal for them?" "They're being weirder than usual," I admitted, slipping into heels. "Mom keeps checking the time, and Dad's barely said 10 words since they arrived." Noah wrapped his arms around me from behind, meeting my eyes in the mirror. "Try not to worry about it tonight. This is your celebration. Whatever's going on with them can wait." I nodded, wanting to believe him. But the knot in my stomach tightened as I heard the doorbell ring, announcing the first guests. Ashley arrived with a bottle of champagne and a fierce hug. "You look amazing," she declared before lowering her voice. "Your dad's already here and looking like someone stole his favorite law book. What's that about?" "I have no idea," I whispered back. "But something's definitely up." As more friends arrived, the house filled with cheerful conversation and laughter. My co-workers, friends from the neighborhood, Noah's business partners, Everyone seemed to be enjoying themselves. Everyone except my parents. Mom circulated among the guests, smiling and chatting, but her eyes constantly scanned the room, landing frequently on the front door. Dad stationed himself near the drinks table, nursing the same glass of scotch for an hour, his posture rigid. Around 8:30, as the party was in full swing, I saw them huddled in the corner of the living room, heads close together. Mom's expression was pleading, Dad's resolute. I couldn't hear what they were saying over the music and chatter, but their body language spoke volumes. Mom gestured toward the door. Dad shook his head firmly. Then I heard a name I didn't recognize: Michael. Who was Michael? A client of Dad's, a colleague of Mom's. The name didn't ring any bells. Dad's response to whatever Mom had said was immediate and harsh. I don't care if he found the address, Laura. This is Iris's day. Mom placed her hand on his arm, her voice too low for me to catch. Whatever she said made Dad's face darken further. Before I could move closer to hear more, Noah appeared at my side with a plate of appetizers. You haven't eaten anything all night, he observed. Birthday girl needs sustenance. I accepted the plate distractedly, my eyes still on my parents. Noah, do we know anyone named Michael? He thought for a moment. Not that I can think of. Why, I just overheard my parents talking about someone with that name. Dad seemed upset. Noah glanced over at them. Maybe it's work-related. Your dad always seems stressed about cases. Maybe, I agreed, though it didn't feel right. This seemed personal, not professional. Ashley materialized beside us, champagne glass in hand. What are we gossiping about? Iris thinks her parents are fighting about someone named Michael, Noah explained. Ashley's eyes widened slightly. Michael? That's interesting. Something in her tone made me turn to face her fully. What do you know? She hesitated. Probably nothing. It's just... Remember how I told you once that I thought your dad was hiding something? You've said that many times, I pointed out. Well, about a year ago, when I was waiting for you outside your office building, I saw your dad downtown. He was arguing with a younger man. I couldn't hear what they were saying, but it looked intense. When I asked your dad about it later, saying I'd seen him in the city, he got really weird and said he hadn't been downtown at all that day. And you think the man was named Michael? How would you know that? Ashley shook her head. I don't know his name. I'm just saying your dad was definitely hiding something that day. I felt a chill despite the warmth of the crowded room. What was going on with my parents? Should I confront them now in the middle of my birthday party, or wait until tomorrow when we could speak privately? Before I could decide, the caterer announced it was time for cake. As guests gathered around the dining table, I found myself searching the crowd for my parents. Mom was standing near the kitchen doorway, her face pale. Dad was nowhere to be seen. Then I spotted him standing rigidly by the front window, peering out at the street, watching for someone, watching for Michael. The lavender honey cake glowed with 28 candles as my friend sang happy birthday. I smiled and played along, but my mind was elsewhere, fixated on the strange behavior of my parents and the mysterious Michael. As I leaned forward to blow out the candles, I caught sight of my mother approaching my father by the window. She whispered something in his ear that made him stiffen. His head snapped toward the door, his expression changing from controlled tension to something I'd never seen before: fear. I followed his gaze just as the doorbell rang. Noah, closest to the entrance, moved to answer it. I'll get it, he called cheerfully. No. My father's voice cut through the party noise with unusual force. Several guests turned to look at him in surprise, but it was too late. Noah had already opened the door, revealing a man I'd never seen before. He appeared to be in his early 30s, with dark hair similar to my own and a hesitant smile. He was well dressed in a navy blazer and khakis, holding what looked like a small gift bag. Hi, he said, his voice carrying across the suddenly quieter room. I'm looking for Iris Peterson. Before Noah could respond, my father moved with startling speed across the living room. As he passed me, his arm shot out, pushing me roughly to the side. I stumbled against the dining table, nearly knocking over the cake. Dad, I gasped, more shocked than hurt. The room fell silent as my father confronted the stranger in the doorway. You need to leave, Dad said, his voice low but intense. Now. The man stood his ground, though he looked uncomfortable. Mr. Peterson, I just want to talk. Laura said it would be okay. My mother had appeared beside my father, her hand on his arm. James, please, not like this. I stared at them in confusion. The stranger knew my parents, and my mother had invited him. What is going on? I demanded, moving toward the door. Dad turned to me, his expression a mixture of anger and something else I couldn't identify. Was it shame? Iris, go back to your guests. This doesn't concern you. I felt a flare of indignation. This is my house and my birthday party. If something's happening, I think it absolutely concerns me. The stranger looked directly at me then, and I felt an odd jolt of recognition. There was something familiar about his eyes, though I was certain we'd never met. I'm sorry for interrupting your party, he said. My name is Michael Reeves, and I believe I'm your half-brother. The words hung in the air like a physical presence. Half-brother. I didn't have a brother, half or otherwise. I was an only child. I'd always been an only child. I looked at my parents expecting them to deny this absurd claim. Instead, my mother's eyes filled with tears, and my father's face had gone completely white. Mom, my voice came out small like a child's. She nodded almost imperceptibly. I'm so sorry, Iris. We were going to tell you, but not today. Not like this. The room spun slightly. I was vaguely aware of my guests watching the scene unfold, with expressions ranging from shock to uncomfortable fascination. Noah had moved to my side, his hand supportive at the small of my back. Ashley stood nearby, her earlier suspicions confirmed in the most dramatic way possible. I don't understand, I said, looking between my parents and the stranger Michael, my apparent half-brother. How is this possible? Dad finally spoke, his voice tight. This isn't the time or place for this discussion. Then when is... I challenged, finding strength in my anger. After hiding it for 30 years? Michael shifted uncomfortably. I'm 29, he offered quietly. And I only found out about all of you last year. When my adoptive mother died, I found my original birth certificate with your father's name on it. I did the math quickly. 29, a year older than me, which meant, you had a child before you married Mom, I asked my father. The silence that followed was answer enough. My mother stepped forward, her counselor training evident in her calm tone. Everyone, I think we need some privacy for this family discussion. Iris, is there somewhere we can talk? Family discussion. Family. The word had a new strange weight to it now. I nodded mechanically. We can use my office. Turning to my guests, I forced a smile that felt like it might crack my face. Sorry for the drama, everyone. Please enjoy the cake. I just need a few minutes. Noah squeezed my hand. Do you want me to come with you? I hesitated, then nodded. I needed his steadying presence. Ashley caught my eye, mouthing, "Call me," as I led my parents and this stranger, my brother, down the hallway to my small home office. Once inside, with the door closed against the muted sounds of the party continuing without me, I turned to face my family, my expanded, complicated family. Explain, I said simply. Dad ran a hand over his face, suddenly looking older than his 60 years. I met Michael's mother during law school. It was before I met your mother, Iris. When Catherine told me she was pregnant, I wasn't ready to be a father. I had my career ahead of me, goals I'd set. So you abandoned them, I stated flatly. He flinched. I provided financial support. But yes, I wasn't involved in his life. Catherine married someone else when Michael was 2, and they agreed to raise him as their own. Did you know? I asked my mother. When you married Dad, did you know he had a son? Mom looked down at her hands. Yes, I knew. Your father was honest with me about it before we married. The betrayal cut deep. So I'm the only one who didn't know. My whole life has been a lie. Not a lie, Dad insisted. We were a family, Iris. A family with secrets, I shot back. Pretty big ones. Michael, who had been quiet until now, spoke up. I didn't come here to cause problems. After my mom died, I just wanted to know where I came from, who I am. Looking at him properly, for the first time I could see my father in his features. The same straight nose, the same way of holding his shoulders. But there was a gentleness to him that reminded me more of my mother than my father. How long have you been in contact? I asked. I found your father about 8 months ago, Michael explained. He wasn't exactly welcoming at first, but eventually agreed to meet me privately. I've met with both your parents a few times since then. 8 months. While I was house hunting planning my future sharing Sunday dinners with them, my parents had been meeting my secret half-brother without ever mentioning his existence. I wanted to tell you, Mom said softly, but your father thought it would be too disruptive. Dad's jaw tightened. I was trying to protect you, Iris. By pushing me, literally pushing me away from my own brother. The absurdity of it struck me suddenly, and to everyone's surprise, including my own, I laughed. It wasn't a happy sound, but it released some of the tension coiled inside me. My father looked startled. I reacted instinctively. I didn't want you to find out like this. How did Michael even know about my party? I asked. Mom looked guilty. I mentioned it when we met for coffee last week. I didn't explicitly invite him, but I did tell him about it. Michael nodded. I shouldn't have come without a clear invitation. That's on me. But after hearing so much about you, Iris, I just wanted to meet my sister. Sister? The word felt strange and new. Noah, who had been silent until now, finally spoke. I think everyone had good intentions here, even if the execution was flawed. The question is, where do you all go from here? It was a good question. Where did we go from here? The family I thought I had was gone. In its place was something more complicated, built on decades of secrets. I looked at Michael, this stranger who shared my blood. Then at my parents, these familiar figures who suddenly seemed like strangers too. I think, I said slowly, that I need some time to process this. And I think my guests are probably wondering what's happening. My words were calm, but inside I was in turmoil. Part of me wanted to scream at my father for his deception, at my mother for her complicity. Part of me was curious about Michael, this unexpected addition to my life. And part of me just wanted everyone to leave so I could collapse into Noah's arms and cry. As we moved to rejoin the party, Michael touched my arm lightly. I can go. This is your birthday, and I've already disrupted it enough. I considered his offer for a moment, then made a decision that would change the course of all our lives. No, I said firmly. You should stay. We have 29 years to catch up on after all. The look of surprise and gratitude on his face made something shift inside me. Whatever anger I felt toward my parents, it wasn't Michael's fault. He was as much a victim of my father's choices as I was. As we returned to the living room, I saw that most of the guests had tactfully departed, leaving only Noah Ashley and a few close friends. The cake sat untouched on the dining table, its candles burned down to stubs. Some birthday this had turned out to be. I think you should leave. The words came out of my mouth with a calm I didn't feel as I faced my parents in the half-empty living room. Most guests had made discreet exits, murmuring awkward goodbyes and promises to call me tomorrow. Only Noah, Ashley, and Michael remained along with my shell-shocked parents. Dad's face darkened. Iris, you're upset. Let's not make decisions while emotions are running high. I'm absolutely upset, I agreed. I just found out my entire family history is built on lies. I think I'm entitled to some anger right now. Mom stepped forward, her counselor voice in full effect. Honey, we understand you're hurt. We made mistakes in how we handled this situation, but pushing us away won't help. I laughed bitterly. Interesting choice of words, Mom, considering Dad literally pushed me away from Michael. And you've both been pushing me away from the truth my entire life. Noah moved to stand beside me, his presence solid and reassuring. I could feel Ashley's supportive gaze from across the room, where she was quietly clearing away abandoned plates and glasses. Michael looked deeply uncomfortable. Maybe I should be the one to go, he suggested. We can all talk when things are calmer. No, I said firmly, surprising myself with the certainty in my voice. You stay. I want to talk to you. I turned back to my parents. But I need some space from both of you right now. Dad's face hardened into the expression I'd seen countless times when I disappointed him. This is exactly why we didn't tell you sooner, Iris. You're reacting emotionally instead of rationally. His condescension ignited something in me. Years of trying to meet impossible standards, of never quite measuring up, of carefully contained responses to his criticism, all coalesced into a moment of perfect clarity. Dad, my entire worldview just shattered. I'm allowed to be emotional. What I'm not going to do is pretend this didn't happen, or that it doesn't matter, which seems to be your specialty." Mom began to cry silently, which would normally have made me back down. Not today. "I need you both to leave. Now. We can talk tomorrow or next week or whenever I'm ready. But right now I can't even look at you without feeling betrayed." For a moment I thought Dad would argue further. Instead, he nodded stiffly and placed his hand on Mom's shoulder. "Come on, Laura. Iris needs time." As they gathered their coats, Mom approached me one last time. "I love you, sweetheart. We both do. That's never been a lie." I couldn't respond. The lump in my throat felt like it might choke me. After they left the house, fell into an awkward silence. Noah squeezed my hand. "Are you okay?" "Not remotely," I admitted. "But I will be." Ashley emerged from the kitchen with 4 glasses and an opened bottle of wine. "I think we could all use this," she said, pouring generous servings. "What a night." Michael accepted a glass with a grateful smile. "I'm so sorry about all this. I never meant to cause such chaos." I studied him over the rim of my wine glass. Now that the initial shock was fading, I could see my own features reflected in his face. The shape of our eyes was identical, though his were hazel to my blue. We had the same dark hair, the same slight dimple in our left cheeks. "It's not your fault," I told him. "You didn't know Dad was keeping you a secret from me." "I honestly thought you knew about me and just weren't interested in meeting," Michael admitted. "It was only when I mentioned wanting to contact you directly that your father got defensive. That's when I realized you had no idea I existed." "Classic James Peterson," Ashley muttered. "Control the narrative at all costs." Noah gave her a warning look, but I appreciated her candor. "Tell me about yourself," I said to Michael, settling onto the couch. "I have a brother. I want to know who he is." Over the next few hours, the 4 of us talked. Michael told us about growing up in Seattle with his mother and adoptive father, who had been kind but distant, about studying architecture, and now running his own small firm, about moving to Chicago last year after his adoptive mother died, hoping to connect with his biological family. "She told me about your father on her deathbed," he explained. "All my life she'd said my birth father was someone she'd dated briefly who wasn't ready for a family. It was only at the end that she gave me his name and told me he'd gone on to become a successful lawyer in Chicago." "Did she know about me?" I asked. Michael shook his head. "I don't think so. She seemed surprised when she looked him up online and saw he had a family." I tried to imagine what it must have been like for him, discovering at 28 that the story of his origin was more complicated than he'd been told. In some ways, we were in the same boat now, both recalibrating our understanding of our family history. "Why did you want to find him?" I asked. "After all those years," Michael considered the question. "Partly curiosity, partly a need for connection, I guess. After Mom died, I felt untethered, like I was floating without any roots. I thought knowing where I came from might help ground me." I understood that feeling all too well. "And has it?" "Meeting Dad and Mom." He smiled ruefully. "Yes and no. Your father is not the warmest person." This startled a laugh out of me. That's the understatement of the century. "But finding out I have a sister that's been the best part of this whole mess." His sincerity touched me. Despite everything, I felt a connection to this man who was both stranger and family. As the night wore on, Ashley eventually left, hugging me fiercely at the door. "Call me tomorrow. We'll process all this properly with more wine and possibly ice cream." Noah, sensitive as always, suggested taking Michael to our favorite late-night diner for coffee, giving me some space to decompress. I was grateful for his thoughtfulness. Before they left, Michael hesitated at the door. "I meant what I said, Iris. I'm glad I found you, even if the circumstances are messy. I've always wanted a sibling." "I have too," I admitted, though this isn't quite how I imagined getting one. After they departed, I wandered through my home, now eerily quiet after the chaos of the evening. The half-eaten birthday cake still sat on the dining table, a sad reminder of the celebration that had gone so terribly wrong. I found myself in front of the living room mantel, staring at a family photo taken at my college graduation. Mom, Dad, and me smiling for the camera. Dad's hand on my shoulder, proud of his daughter, the future lawyer. Though I disappointed him by choosing marketing instead. Had he been thinking of Michael that day? comparing me to the son he'd abandoned. Had Mom, all those years of striving for perfection, of trying to earn my father's approval, had it been because he was compensating for his abandonment of Michael? Was I unknowingly paying for a sin I hadn't committed? The thought made me angry all over again. But beneath the anger was a deeper, sadder realization. My father, whom I'd always seen as infallible, was just a flawed human being who had made a terrible mistake and spent decades trying to cover it up. And my mother, my ally, had chosen loyalty to her husband over honesty with her daughter. I curled up on the couch, hugging a pillow to my chest, and finally allowed myself to cry. For the family I thought I had, for the brother I never knew, for the little girl who had tried so hard to be enough. By the time Noah returned, I had cried myself out. He found me in the same spot, staring blankly at the wall. "Michael's nice," he said simply, sitting beside me. "I took him to that hotel down the street. He's getting a room for the night." I nodded, grateful that Noah had taken care of this practical detail. "Did he tell you anything else?" "Just that he hopes you'll give him a chance to know you, and that he respects your need for space from your parents." I leaned against Noah's solid warmth. What am I supposed to do now? Pretend everything's normal? Have Sunday dinners with all of us playing happy family? "You don't have to decide anything tonight," he said wisely. "Or tomorrow, or next week. Take the time you need." "I keep thinking about all those times Dad pushed me to be perfect," I said quietly. "All those times he made me feel like I wasn't quite good enough. Was he comparing me to the ideal child he imagined Michael might have been? Or was he trying to make up for abandoning his son by creating a perfect daughter?" Noah considered this. "I don't know, but I think you should ask him these questions directly when you're ready." He was right, of course. But the thought of facing my father again, of having that conversation, filled me with dread. And yet I knew it was necessary if I ever wanted to move forward. "Whatever you decide to do," Noah continued, "about your parents, about Michael, about all of it, I'm with you. You know that, right?" I nodded, suddenly overwhelmed with gratitude for this man who loved me unconditionally, who supported me without trying to control me, who was in many ways everything my father was not. "I think I want to get to know Michael," I said finally. "He didn't ask for any of this either. And the idea of having a brother, it's actually kind of nice." Noah smiled. "I thought you might say that. For what it's worth, I liked him. He seems genuine." "And my parents," I sighed. "I'm still so angry with them." "That's valid. They kept something huge from you. But eventually, you'll need to decide what kind of relationship you want with them going forward." That was the question, wasn't it? Could I forgive them? Could we rebuild something new from the ashes of what I thought we had? I didn't have answers yet. But as Noah held me close in the quiet aftermath of the most tumultuous birthday of my life, I realized something important. Whatever happened next, I wasn't alone. I had Noah. I had Ashley. And now, unexpectedly, I had a brother. Perhaps in a strange way, this birthday had given me a gift after all. Over the next week, my emotions swung wildly between anger, curiosity, sadness, and occasional moments of unexpected hope. I took time off work, claiming a family emergency, which wasn't far from the truth. Noah was my rock, giving me space when I needed it and comfort when I asked. Ashley brought lunch daily, letting me vent without judgment. And Michael waited patiently for me to decide what role, if any, I wanted him to play in my life. 3 days after my birthday, I invited him to meet me at a quiet coffee shop near my house. Away from the drama of that night, I could see him more clearly. He had Dad's analytical mind, but none of his coldness. He laughed easily and listened intently. He showed me pictures of his architectural designs, with genuine passion rather than arrogance. "I always wanted siblings growing up," he admitted as we sat across from each other, steam rising from our cups. "I used to imagine having a sister or brother to share secrets with, to navigate life together." I felt the same way, I confessed. Being an only child was lonely sometimes, especially with parents like mine. "What were they like?" he asked. "Growing up, I mean." I'm still trying to understand who our father is beyond the stern lawyer I've met a few times. Our father. The phrase still felt strange. I told him about Dad's high expectations, Mom's peacemaking the pressure I'd felt to be perfect. He nodded in understanding. So that's why you seemed surprised when I said Dad wasn't warm, he observed. You thought I was being charitable. I laughed. I was shocked you described him so mildly. My adoptive dad wasn't exactly demonstrative either, Michael explained. Men of that generation often aren't. But he was fair, and in his way loving. Was it good? I asked hesitantly. Your childhood. It was the question that had been haunting me. Had my father's absence damaged Michael? Had his life been harder because Dad walked away? Michael considered the question seriously. It was good, he said finally. Not perfect, but good. Mom loved me fiercely. My adoptive dad provided well and taught me a lot, even if he wasn't particularly affectionate. I never felt unwanted. Relief washed over me, followed quickly by a new wave of anger at my father. Michael had turned out well despite Dad's abandonment, not because of anything Dad had done. I'm glad, I said sincerely. And I'm sorry our father wasn't there for you. Michael shrugged, though I could see the old hurt in his eyes. I've made my peace with it. Or I'm trying to. Meeting you helps, actually. Knowing I have a sister who's pretty great. I blushed at the compliment. You barely know me. I'm a good judge of character, he insisted with a smile. By the end of our coffee date, something had shifted. The idea of Michael as my brother was beginning to feel real, even natural. We exchanged phone numbers and made plans to have dinner the following week. As we parted outside the cafe, he gave me a tentative hug that I found myself returning. Thank you, he said simply, for giving me a chance. My parents were another matter entirely. Mom called daily, leaving increasingly emotional voicemails that I couldn't bring myself to return. Dad predictably was more reserved, texting once to say they were available to talk when you're ready. It was Noah who finally convinced me to face them. You don't have to forgive them, he said as we lay in bed one night a week after the birthday disaster. But I think you need to hear them out for your own sake. Otherwise, this will fester. He was right. The next morning, I called my mother and arranged for them to come to my house that evening. I wanted home field advantage for this conversation. Noah offered to make himself scarce, but I asked him to stay. I need you there, I admitted. You're my family too. The look of love and pride on his face at those words gave me strength. When my parents arrived precisely at 7, the tension was palpable. Mom looked like she hadn't slept in days. Even Dad appeared diminished somehow, the usual confident set of his shoulders notably absent. We sat in the living room, the same space where my world had exploded a week earlier. Noah brought coffee that no one touched. Thank you for seeing us. Mom began, her voice wavering slightly. We've been so worried about you. I needed time, I said simply. I'm still processing everything. Dad cleared his throat. Iris, I owe you an explanation. And an apology. The admission of fault was so uncharacteristic that I stared at him in shock. When I met Catherine, Michael's mother, I was young and ambitious. When she told me she was pregnant, I panicked. I wasn't ready to be a father, not then. I offered financial support, but I was relieved when she said her new husband wanted to raise the child as his own. So you just walked away. The hurt in my voice was evident. Dad nodded, looking more vulnerable than I'd ever seen him. I told myself it was best for everyone, that the child would have a stable home with 2 parents who wanted him, that I could focus on my career, on building the life I thought I wanted. But you stayed in contact. Sent money? For the first few years. Then Catherine asked me to stop. Her husband had formally adopted Michael, and they wanted a clean break. I convinced myself it was the right thing to do. And then you met Mom, got married, had me, and never thought about your son again. The bitterness crept back into my voice. Dad's eyes met mine directly. I thought about him constantly, Iris. Every birthday, every Christmas, every milestone in your life made me wonder about his. It was my greatest shame, my deepest regret. But as the years passed, it seemed impossible to fix. Mom reached for his hand. When your father told me about Michael before we married, I encouraged him to reach out. but Catherine was clear that she didn't want any contact. So you both just decided to keep his existence from me forever. We thought we were protecting you, Mom said softly. We didn't want you to feel less than, like you weren't enough for your father. The irony hit me hard. But that's exactly how I felt my entire life, Mom. Dad's standards were impossible to meet. Nothing I did was ever quite good enough. Dad looked stricken. Is that how you felt? How could I not? I countered. The constant criticism, the focus on every small failure, the dismissal of my accomplishments, if they didn't align with your vision for my life. I was trying to make you strong. Dad said, his voice rough with emotion. Independent. Successful. Why? To compensate for abandoning Michael. To prove you could be a good father the second time around. He flinched as if I'd struck him. Perhaps in part, but mainly because I loved you, Iris. I wanted to give you every advantage, every opportunity. By making me feel like I was never enough. I never meant to make you feel that way. Dad's voice cracked slightly. I'm so proud of you. I always have been. The words I'd longed to hear for decades, delivered in the aftermath of betrayal. I didn't know how to process the complex emotions swirling within me. When Michael found us, Mom continued quietly, it felt like fate giving us a second chance, a chance to right an old wrong, but we handled it terribly. We should have told you immediately. Why didn't you? Dad looked down at his hands. I was afraid. Afraid you would hate me for what I'd done. Afraid you would see me differently. I do see you differently, I acknowledged. But not just because you abandoned Michael, because you lied to me my whole life, because you pushed me away literally and figuratively when the truth was finally revealed. I panicked, Dad admitted. When I saw him at the door, when I realized he was about to enter your life without any preparation, I reacted instinctively. I was wrong to push you. I'm sorry, Iris. An apology. From James Peterson. It was nearly as shocking as discovering I had a brother. I've met with Michael several times, I told them. He's a good person. No thanks to you, Dad. Dad nodded, accepting the rebuke. I know. He's remarkable considering everything, much like you. The compliment felt genuine, which only confused me further. What happens now? Mom asked tentatively. Can we find a way forward? All of us. I thought about Michael, about the connection we were building, about the years lost that could never be reclaimed. I don't know, I answered honestly. I need more time. I want to get to know Michael better. And I need you both to understand that our relationship has changed. I can't just pretend this never happened. We don't expect that, Dad said quietly. We just want a chance to earn back your trust. That will take time, I warned them. We have time, Mom said with a sad smile. We're not going anywhere. As they prepared to leave, Dad paused at the door. There's something else you should know, Iris. Something good that's come from all this. What's that? Meeting Michael, seeing how well he turned out despite my failures, seeing how graciously he's handled everything. It's made me reconsider some of my judgments. He glanced at Noah, who had remained quietly supportive throughout the conversation, including about the people you've chosen to have in your life. It wasn't an explicit approval of Noah, but coming from my father, it was significant. Noah seemed to understand the weight of the moment, nodding slightly in acknowledgement. After my parents left, Noah pulled me into a gentle embrace. You did great, he murmured against my hair. How are you feeling? Exhausted, I admitted, and confused, and still angry. But also, maybe a little hopeful. Is that crazy? Not at all, he assured me. Families are complicated, even the ones without secret siblings. I managed a small laugh at that. What would I do without you? Fortunately, you'll never have to find out. He kissed me softly. I'm not going anywhere. For the first time since my birthday, I felt the tight knot of anxiety in my chest begin to loosen. Whatever happened next, I wasn't facing it alone. 3 weeks after my world-changing birthday, I organized a dinner at my house. Not a large gathering like the ill-fated party, but an intimate meal with the people who now constituted my expanded understanding of family. Noah spent the afternoon cooking his specialty, a savory paella that filled the house with fragrant steam. I set the dining table with care, arranging flowers and candles, creating a warm, welcoming atmosphere. Ashley arrived early to help bringing wine and her moral support. "Are you sure you're ready for this?" she asked as we arranged wine glasses. "The full family summit, as ready as I'll ever be," I replied with more confidence than I felt. It's been 3 weeks of separate conversations. I think it's time we all sat down together. Michael arrived next, bearing a small potted orchid. "Housewarming gift," he explained with a smile. "Better late than never." My parents came last, punctual as always, Mom carrying a homemade apple pie, Dad looking uncharacteristically nervous. The initial greetings were awkward, everyone hyper-aware of the complex dynamics at play. But as we moved to the table, as Noah served his beautiful paella, as wine was poured and bread passed, something remarkable began to happen. Conversation flowed tentatively at first, then with increasing ease. Michael shared stories of his architectural projects. Mom talked about a challenging student she'd been counseling. Dad, to everyone's surprise, asked Noah thoughtful questions about his web design business. Ashley kept the mood light with her characteristic wit. And I watched them, all these people who formed my complicated, imperfect family, feeling a strange sense of peace settle over me. When the meal was finished, and we had moved to the living room with coffee and Mom's apple pie, I found myself sitting next to my father on the couch, slightly apart from the others. "Thank you for this," he said quietly, "for giving us all a chance." "I'm still angry sometimes," I admitted. "I don't know if that will ever completely go away." He nodded, accepting this truth. "I understand, but I want you to know something, Iris. Something I should have told you long ago." I waited, hearing the seriousness in his tone. "You have exceeded every expectation I ever had for you. Not because you followed my path or made the choices I would have made, but because you've built a life on your terms with integrity and determination." I blinked back sudden tears. "Even though I didn't become a lawyer," he smiled ruefully. "Especially because you didn't become a lawyer. You had the courage to forge your own path. It took me far too long to appreciate that." From across the room, I caught Michael watching us, a small smile playing at his lips. There was no jealousy in his expression, only a gentle understanding that made me realize how lucky I was to have found him, even under these circumstances. Mom joined us, perching on the arm of the couch. "I was thinking," she said tentatively, "that perhaps we could start a new tradition. Monthly family dinners rotating between houses." "I'd like that," Michael said immediately. I considered the suggestion. A month ago, the idea of regular family dinners would have meant something entirely different. Now it encompassed this new expanded circle. The thought was both daunting and oddly comforting. "I think that sounds nice," I agreed, "as long as Noah does the cooking when it's our turn." Noah laughed from where he stood chatting with Ashley. "Happy to be the family chef." Family. The word was taking on new dimensions, expanding to include chosen bonds alongside blood ties. As the evening wound down, as goodbyes were exchanged with tentative hugs and promises to call soon, I found myself standing at my front door with Michael, the last to leave. "So," he said with a gentle smile, "quite a different ending from your birthday party." I laughed. "Thank goodness for that." "You know," he said thoughtfully, "when I first found out about you, I had this fantasy of what it would be like to be part of a family. The reality has been messier than I imagined." "Welcome to the Petersons," I said dryly. "But also richer," he continued. "More real. I didn't just gain a father, Iris. I gained a sister. And that's been the greatest gift in all of this." I felt tears prick my eyes again. "I always wanted a sibling." "Well, now you've got one, for better or worse." He pulled me into a hug, and this time it didn't feel awkward or forced. It felt right. After everyone had gone, Noah and I stood in the kitchen, loading the dishwasher in comfortable silence. "What are you thinking?" he asked, finally handing me a wine glass to rinse. I considered the question. "I'm thinking about that moment at my birthday party, when Dad pushed me and then froze when he saw Michael. That was pretty dramatic." "It was, but you know what's strange? In a way, that push was the best thing he could have done. Noah raised an eyebrow. How do you figure? It broke something open. All those years of perfect appearances, of keeping secrets, of pretending everything was fine when it wasn't. One impulsive shove and the whole facade came crumbling down. I placed the last plate in the dishwasher and straightened up, feeling lighter than I had in weeks. Sometimes we need to be pushed out of our comfort zones, I continued. Sometimes we need our carefully constructed worlds to fall apart so we can build something better, something more authentic. Noah wrapped his arms around me. And is that what you're doing now? Building something better. I thought about Michael, my newfound brother, about my parents, flawed but trying, about Ashley and Noah, who had stood by me through everything. I think so, I said softly. It's not what I expected my life to look like. It's messy and complicated and still healing. But yes, I think it might actually be better. Noah kissed my forehead. I'm proud of you, you know that. Not everyone could handle what you've been through with such grace. I haven't always been graceful, I pointed out. There were a lot of tears and yelling. That's part of grace too. Being honest about your feelings, setting boundaries, demanding truth. You've done it all with integrity. His words warmed me. This was what love should feel like, I realized. Not conditional approval based on meeting impossible standards, but steady support through life's messiest moments. The journey ahead wouldn't be simple. There would be difficult conversations. Old wounds reopened, new boundaries to establish. But for the first time since my birthday, I felt genuinely optimistic about the future. Sometimes family is what we're born into. Sometimes it's what we choose. And sometimes, if we're lucky, it's both. A complex, imperfect tapestry of relationships that, despite their flaws, enrich our lives in ways we never imagined. As I nestled into Noah's embrace in our quiet kitchen, I realized that my father's instinctive push on my birthday had indeed knocked me off balance. But in falling, I had discovered new strength. In losing the family I thought I had gained a fuller, truer version. And in facing the painful truth, I had found a path to healing. Sometimes we need to be pushed hard to find what was waiting for us all along. Has someone in your family ever kept a secret that changed everything when you discovered it? I'd love to hear your stories in the comments. And if my story resonated with you, please subscribe, and share it with someone who might need to hear that family complications can eventually lead to healing. Thank you for being here with me through this journey. And remember that sometimes our greatest challenges bring unexpected gifts.